So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. The Summer Boys are here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. Got a fresh cut, Betz.
I did, Kyle. I feel great. You know, the vibes are high. I saw your kids are out for the summer for school, which is crazy. It's not even June. But yes, I did get a fresh haircut. Always makes you feel good. We're also inching closer and closer by the day to the Ultimate Draft Kit coming out, which means we're wrapping up a very busy time of year. Obviously, the UDK gets updated all summer, but like getting to June 1st is like a holiday for us. So I'm excited for everybody to get in there and get all that information, best ball primer, and all those good things. But I'm feeling good, man. Vibes are high, and it's a great day to talk some football.
Dude, vibes are super, super high here for me. I started off the day doing a little poolside work. My kids had swim practice, brought the laptop, typing out some more UDK blurbs, just doing a little research by the pool. Here's the problem, though. I don't know, those of you that work at home, Betz and I do that. I feel like I'm not doing a great job as a parent, and I'm not really doing a good job at my job. So I end up doing bad at both.
Yeah, I can feel that. I feel that some days too. Not in your work, I'm not saying, but yeah. I can relate where it's tough, man. Sometimes you get in the zone, and then all of a sudden somebody comes to the office door, your kid needs something, you just feel distracted. You walk by and you see dishes that need done. So it's the life we chose, Kyle. Not everybody can do this, okay? You know, we're in the trenches. But no, man, it's great. I love the flexibility. Being able to work by the pool. I mean, dude, you got the life, man.
I did have a pretty good day. Every year we do right when school gets out, the kids get off the bus and just get demolished by. We made, I think we had 600 water balloons sitting there ready. I even saved some snowballs from when it snowed here. So I sat on that for about 5 or 6 months, and then quickly realized these are ice blocks. These are death traps.
Did you injure any children in the process?
No, I did not. And my oldest son, Houston, who just finished 3rd grade, he saw them. He goes, "Daddy, where did you get those?" And I said, "Houston, I've been saving this for 6 months." And his reaction was, "That's so awesome." Like, he was happy, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted to. What I really cared about was the forward thinking. That I thought about it then, I got to use it now, and I got the reaction I wanted. So snowballs in the middle of summer is a cool thing. It's a good juxtaposition, as the kids say.
Absolutely crushed it, Kyle. Yeah, that video was that was great, man. That was a great little montage you put together. It made me feel like I was in a great mood for summer. My kids obviously aren't in school yet. They'll start preschool in the fall. But like when you're not in that phase of life, summer just kind of is the same. Yeah, it just like flows into the next season. But I feel like when you're a kid, man, when you get out of school, like that's summer right there. That's living. So I'm happy for you and your family and your kids. You guys have any fun plans this summer?
I'm going to Philadelphia to watch a baseball game with a friend in a week.
A week from yesterday. Yeah, Braves and Phillies in Philly, Citizens Bank Park, going to be rocking. I mean, the atmosphere is going to be out of control, Kyle. I can't even tell you. I actually found out it is retro hat giveaway night. So you'll be getting a Phillies hat with your ticket.
Oh, no retro Brave stuff they're giving out?
No, those are in the dumpster.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be mostly poolside, having a margarita. Yeah, drafting, having a margarita or two. Mowed the lawn the other day. I texted you right after. I was like, man, I'm feeling alive that I got to do that. And I don't listen to football when I mow. It's either just music or just the sound of the mower, just the little, the summer sounds, the soundtrack.
The summer sound, just the lawnmower blasting my eardrums. Yeah, it's great, man. I love it.
Oh, man. On this show, you and I will get to talk about best ball edges. And, with best ball, if you've been playing for a while, you're like, okay, I kind of know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to have this roster construction. I know that this is what works. I'm supposed to stack. They tell me that week 15, 16, and 17 is important. I listen to Borg Betz. I follow their rankings to a T. And yet, you and I have spent time trying to grind and find the edges that people need in 2025. Because last year's data is descriptive. We always talk about this. It's descriptive. It's not necessarily prescriptive of, oh, well, if you just draft these running backs and they crushed and they were super healthy, they're going to do it again. We kind of know that it doesn't work that way. So we're going to give you some edges to work with in best ball. And Betz mentioned it. Our best ball primer will be live on June 1st. That is detailing every single team, all 32 teams. We have metrics where you can look at based on how the team plays, their stackability. So where do these players go? And is it easy to stack or does it cost you a lot? Like the Bengals. We talk about in order for the Bengals to pay off, it's very, very tough. We also have their playoff matchups highlighted and we can tell you these are the ones that we're going after. We're going to talk about that. But right around the corner, everything's there, ultimatedraftkit.com if you want to be a part of it. But I wanted to get your week 15, 16, and 17 takes. Last week, you and I had our win totals extravaganza. We walked through the NFL schedule. And if you haven't listened to that episode, stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing right now. If you're taking care of kids, they'll be okay. You go and you listen to that episode and you walk through everything and you'll realize, man, these guys kind of know what they're talking about. Maybe they don't on some of these teams. But we got to look at the schedule. But for best ball, it's usually hyped up that the week 15, 16, 17 is super important. Before we get into the games we like, though, let's kind of temper people's expectations, Betz, about how we approach it, because it's not everything, but it is something.
Definitely, yeah. And obviously it depends on what you're playing as far as your contest. If you're in just a usual 12-person league, this is pretty irrelevant. If you're in a large field tournament like Best Ball Mania or the DraftKings Million Maker, what you're trying to do is, it's hard to get to these final weeks. Almost the vast majority of the teams that you draft will not make it there. But the ones that do, you want to try to give them the strength that they need to finish strong in the playoff weeks where obviously all the money is. And when I think about this, I really think about if my team gets there, how can I make the bet stronger? And when you look at previous winners of Best Ball Mania, whether it's the DK Millie, a lot of these teams that are drafted that end up at the top of the leaderboard have some sort of game stack to go along with the team that they drafted for the Week 17 players that they have on their roster. And when you think about it from a DFS perspective, it makes perfect sense. If you're, for this year, for example, the Cardinals and the Bengals are playing, if you're betting on Joe Burrow and the Bengals to go off this year, you're already building your bet as if that's correct. When you get to Week 17, maybe it's a Trey McBride team. Maybe it's Marvin Harrison. Maybe it's Michael Wilson at the end of your draft. You don't really know. You don't know that information well in advance, but you're just trying to basically say, if this team gets there, what if that game goes bonkers? And that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I will say, sometimes it feels like we overemphasize some of this stuff, but it is important. And I think on the hierarchy of how important is it, if you're not doing the baseline stuff first, it definitely is overvalued. So if your roster construction is all out of whack just for the sake of Week 17, you're missing the boat. If your draft capital allocation at quarterback and tight end, et cetera, is out of whack just because of Week 17, you're missing the boat. So it's part of the list of things that I care about, but I would say it's 4th or 5th on the list for me, for sure. And then the other thing is just making sure, like I said, you're targeting your Week 17, 15, 16 as well, builds based off of your contest. So there are tournaments, especially on DraftKings, there's some where you get to the final, like make sure you look at the payout structure. The final is like 20 people. Like I don't really care about week 17 and that sort of thing. But in BBM where it's 500 plus or, higher, it's like that's basically a DFS tournament. So you should kind of think about your roster being able to compete in that environment versus some of these other small fields.
The hardest part is that we can't control the different buttons and levers of something that's going to happen in January, right? Like as much as we look at these and I'm looking at the totals, I can see the games in front of me, which you can have all of that in the Best Ball Primer. The games that are indoors, it's like, oh, cool, this game has a 48 total. A lot can change, but you look at the games that the Bengals have. Week 15, Baltimore, that game's over 47. At Miami, that's a high total. And then against Arizona. Those are all great games that we're going to target, but it's already baked into, their ADP. This is a good team. It's a good offense and a team you want to, go after. I think one of the things that I focused last year on is if I'm going to have a tiebreaker, if everybody's focusing on week 17, I just find that week 16, this was true last year, and it's definitely true this year, is there's actually better games, and there's more dome games, there's more games that already have a total over 47 in week 16 versus week 17. And so as much as I'd love to be able to set up everything to win, if I could arbitrarily increase my win rate by a little bit and differentiate myself, I will look at some of the week 16 matchups, and there's some really good ones out there we'll highlight, but like, I might go to this game, by the way. The Falcons go to Arizona to play the Cardinals. I've been to a Falcons-Cardinals game in Arizona. I've been to a Falcons-Cardinals game in Atlanta. They're both in the Dome, and it's been pretty fun when I have gone to them. But that's one of those that, like, those teams aren't... there's a couple guys priced up, but there's some ancillary pieces, like Darnell Mooney, again, that I think you can kind of mix and match there. But at the end of the day, I think it is overemphasized. I think people poke fun at it, and yet when it comes down to players later, I might correlate those. But I don't feel like you have to be obsessed like we were 2 or 3 years ago of like, oh, you got to know all the matchups for week 17 right now. I don't think it's quite as valuable as it used to be, but I still wanted to highlight a couple. So any particular, like for instance, the Cardinals, the Falcons have great schedules during the playoffs. The Texans and Colts have some great games, mostly indoor. And then the LA teams, the Rams and the Chargers, also have great schedules. So those are teams that I'm circling. Some of those have some good value picks later on in your draft that I'm kind of circling on their schedules. But any matchups you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think real quick too on just the point of this, there are lines and totals available for these games, which is just so silly. In May, as we know, chaos ensues every year. And we don't really even know who's going to be playing in these games in week 17, right? Like we're making educated guesses based off the depth chart, talent profiles, all those sort of things. But the most important thing you can do is correlate. Don't try to just pick the right game or pick the right guys. Like a couple years ago, remember the whole conversation was like, I don't know, man, like Browns and Jets in week 17, like who cares? Every player in that game went off. And right now, there's matchups on the board that probably look terrible. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to find one on the board here that, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Like, in your mind's eye, what are the chances of that game going over like 42 points? Like, right now, it feels like it's 0%. Like, it just, these two teams are going to be terrible. They want to run the ball. Like, that's kind of the sentiment. But, like, I don't know, man. What if there's just an insane Caleb Johnson and David Njoku game that goes off between those two and they're hitting on high, huge scores in week 17? Like, we don't know what's going to happen in week 17, so just making sure that you're not like saying, I'm only stacking these 3 or 4 games and these, environments and then kind of like missing out on other combinations. Make sure that's a focus. But as far as the ones that I do like, I'm pretty high on Dallas in general this year, just because like this feels a lot like Dak Prescott is going to have to win games for the Cowboys with the state of the defense. They bring in George Pickens. The running back room is obviously not great, not great at all. And I think that could be a wild shootout team. So in week 15, they get Minnesota in the Dome, they get the Chargers in the Dome, and then they get a potential week 17 shootout with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. So I think the Cowboys are super interesting, but in general, don't get tied to like specifics on this stuff. Just make sure you're correlating. And the other thing that's nice about week 16, 17 kind of roadmaps is like, especially late in your drafts, you might be in a habit right now of like saying, I'm only drafting these 3 players. Like, these are my targets. These are my guys. that's fine if you hit on those guys. But if you're tied to a high percentage of your portfolio to a few very thin plays and they don't hit, you're going to have probably not the best year. The nice thing about the schedule is it kind of forces you into like some unique combinations, which I almost like. I never would take, I don't know, for example, the other day I drafted DeMarcus Robinson, Kyle, because I had a Bears team going. And I was like, you know what? He's probably not going to do much this year, but what if he does late in the year and like that combination is unique? So I'm not saying that he's a great pick, but just like in general, thinking about getting access to unique player combinations that you wouldn't have otherwise because of the schedule is really helpful. So I think it's important for that aspect.
Yeah, I've had a couple of moments where I've looked at Rams wide receiver 3s and 4s, Tutu, Whittington, those kind of guys, and I'm looking at late season, do they get a ton of snaps? Terrence Ferguson, whoever. I also think this is where you look at how you drafted running backs and you're building in a storyline that says, hey, Trey Benson takes over during the fantasy playoffs because James Conner gets hurt. Or, you look at one of these situations, you'd say like, okay, Woody Marks has to get in there because Joe Mixon is not able to play, or he falls off efficiency-wise. Those are the kind of things that you build in to your draft. Now, last year, you could have done, Kamani Vidal, he'll have the job at the end of the year. So I'm going to make sure that I focus on week 16 and 17 Charger games with Kamani Vidal as the key piece, and I'm going to correlate that way. It's like, that's such a thin play to base your, strategy or exposure rate. We'll talk about that later on, but like when we talk about the exposures, and if you are getting really high on a player where you're just assuming that they're taking over, it's different. I like to be high in my exposure rates on players that I know will be on the field. So usually that ends up being like wide receiver 2s and 3s that end up there. Good players.
Got to be on the field. Got to be on the field to score some fantasy points, Kyle, they say.
That's what they say. I did want to point this out. And, the Falcons are a good bit. They're a good joke. They're a good team to poke fun at. But did you know, Betz, that for this year, they not only start the fantasy playoffs, week 15, they're the first Thursday night game, Falcons and Bucks. It's a great game, by the way, 47.5, which the Falcons beat the Bucks both times last year. So they start week 15. But did you know that they end week 17 at home on Monday Night Football against Sean McVay, homecoming game for him?
That's going to be fantastic. I assume that I don't remember if they had Monday Night Football in week 17 or not, but I just hope. Oh, that is the Monday night game.
Yep, that's the 17.
Okay, so ignore that. This is the last game of week 17. This is like Ricky Pearsall last year. I mean, imagine the Best Ball Mania team that has, I don't know, Kyle Pitts.
There you go.
They're like, this is what we need tonight, baby. So that should be fun. Yeah, man. Hey, the Falcons, they're going to decide Best Ball Mania. What could go wrong?
Yeah, who knew that the Penix Pitts 2-2 combo was what you needed?
Don't forget Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah, that's all that's where you should be building in all of your scenarios. But we'll give you our exact picks in the Best Ball Primer of the games we like the most and where we want to go with that. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump in.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay, Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Before I hit this button, I did want to mention that I'm on the clock right now. I'm in a Best Ball Mania. I'm the 101. The draft just turned, live. It's a slow clock. And I just want to establish dominance on the rest of my draft. So you know what? I'm going to time out just to let them know something.
Oh, Kyle, you're sick.
Yeah, I probably should take Jamar Chase. Whatever.
Best Ball Bonanza.
So Betz and I are going to go through a couple of different edges that we think in 2025 are different than maybe the way you've been playing best ball, some observations we have about ADP, and some things that we've been doing in our drafts. Betz, you've been hopping in with our Discord channel pretty regularly at lunchtime to draft, and you want to give people just kind of lay the land of how you do that? It's real simple.
I mean, it's lunch club every day around 11:30 to noon-ish Eastern, somewhere in that window. We'll all pop in Discord. Hey, anybody free for a draft? We'll usually hop in a puppy, something like that. And we all draft together. It's been fun. People get to make fun of me, usually for my crazy week 17 picks for round 18. But it's good, man. It's been really good. A lot of good conversations in Discord, even in May, right? Like, we're not even really in peak draft season yet, which is crazy. But there are a lot of people in there talking strategy every single day. And I love our Discord crew, man. It's a good group of guys and girls.
It's funny because I took, who was it? McCaffrey and I think London. I think I took London earlier. But so I have the 49ers and Falcons in there, and they play, I think, in week 6. It's another Monday night game. And I just like wanted to tell people, like, that's the correlation that you need to look for. Everyone's talking week 15, 16, 17, but week 6, that's really the difference here. And I appreciate that people get our humor, that you and I take this seriously, and we also don't take ourselves too seriously about some of these things, especially when we get to throw out really bogus, dumb strategy tips like that. But these are actually going to be really helpful edges. We're not going to go over some of the basics. So if you're one of those people that you're like, hey, I want to start from square one, we have a ton of strategy articles on our website about best ball roster construction. And if you're one of those people like, hey, how many wide receivers do I need? We have that data on there. We'll talk about some of that. But I think the way I'm going to start us off, and I think the way that I'm looking at this to find an edge is when I look at the ADP landscape of Underdog this year, I noticed that running backs look a little different. And the way that we mention it is that ADP is often a pendulum swing of what happened last year. So what happened last year was if you decided to have a couple of running backs early on and they were healthy, they absolutely crushed. And just to give you a picture of that, if you want to look at who the top 12 running backs were in fantasy football last year, they were all taken within the top 19 picks, all of them. So it's not like you were finding this diamond in the rough later on, other than Bucky Irving, who still wasn't a top 12 running back. Like, that's the only way that you made out well in best ball. There's a couple of zones. If you had Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard, J.K. Dobbins had a moment, Rico Dowdle. But other than that, running backs crushed last year. And if you took running backs early, if it was Bijan, Gibbs, Saquon, obviously, Derrick Henry, Kyron, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, who we liked a lot, then you absolutely crushed last year. The problem is taking that descriptive data and then saying that's what's going to happen this year. So in the past, we've talked a lot about zero or hero running back approaches where, hey, just take one of these guys, you'll find the other guys later, other running backs will get hurt, you'll get stronger as the year goes on. Zero running back actually was not great last year. It was fine in the fantasy playoffs, but for advance rates, it wasn't great. So the thinking can be this year, okay, well, maybe best ball has changed. Maybe things are different. So how are you handling this before I give us the exact, here's what you should do? Are you noticing that same thing in your draft this year?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of running backs going very, very early. And in a vacuum, they're all totally fine picks for the most part. I've got my favorites and guys I'm lower on. But in general, these guys are going where they're going because they were awesome last year. But the problem with that is that that's just not how fantasy football works, right? Chaos will ensue because it generally does. And the ADP landscape, like you mentioned, will be basically what happened the year before. And 2 years ago, when zero RB was crushing, everybody said, okay, well, now we're just doing zero RB. That's what we're doing. But at some point last summer, I remember maybe July, you and I got to a point, maybe late July, we're like, hold on a minute. Some of these wide receivers that are going really high just because you need wide receivers in best ball and because that's kind of how the data says this works, these are pretty good running back picks here. And if you kind of realize the ADP shift was way too far, then if you pivoted a little bit and said, hey, I'm going to go a couple running backs early, you probably had an awesome season. I'm not saying either way is definitely going to work or not work this year, but just recognizing those ADP shifts can be really valuable. And I think we've gone a little too far the other direction now with how many running backs are going early. So that's my general take. I've definitely seen that in my drafts. And, certainly people are not afraid to take running backs early after they were incredible last year.
Yeah, the ADP this year, zero RB is basically not what the ADP is saying at all. So last year, there were 8 running backs in the top 24. You didn't see the 10th running back off the board until the 308. And last year, that was Derrick Henry. Okay? That's very different this year where Josh Jacobs is the RB10. He's going towards the back of the second round. So this year, there are 24 running backs in the first 6 rounds, an extra 5 or 6 running backs than a year before. So it's very, very different. Now, we will give you our zero RB targets. We do that every single year. We give you a list of players. But last year, we're going to be honest, it was pretty rough. There's a couple of backfields that we talked about, but it didn't go so well. So here's the edge that I think everyone should try to employ this year. And I'm calling it flip the script on running back, or let's just go back to the old ways. Like there was a way that we used to play best ball in 2021, 2022 that worked out really well. And now you can kind of adjust and say, well, that's not how we play anymore. I'm finding that fantasy football in 2025, redraft as well, is kind of going old school. Like it's kind of going back to the way that we played 4 or 5 years ago. And so I'm personally comfortable with taking at least 2 running backs in the first 6 rounds, something we didn't do a ton last year, but I'm almost setting that as I really like these running backs that are going here. And one of the ways you can do that is if you get a stud in the first 2 rounds, like obviously anybody's going to see Bijan or Gibbs or Genty, and I have McCaffrey ranked very high in mine. So in the first round, I end up with a lot of running backs. I also think that in rounds 4, 5, and 6, you can get one of the rookies. There's about 5 rookies you can choose from. And there's also some undervalued vets this year between Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and I would say Alvin Kamara, I think is just going to be safe and solid. But you need an approach. And so, Betz, you can tell me if this is super lame or super cool. There's no middle ground, okay? I'm taking an alliterative approach here, okay?
All right, go for it.
As a former English teacher, I need the alliteration helps people remember. The first one is you need to bank on some backups. Okay?
That was kind of cool. I like that.
Okay, that's just the start. That's the first little part of this 3-pronged approach, is to bank on the backups, because this used to be the bread and butter for best ball. Right?
Wow.
I know.
Hold on now. Kyle is cooking. Wow. Okay, you got me on that one. That was good.
That's it. That's all I got. No, but like in the past, we would look at undervalued backups and say, oh, well, this is what you do. Like if you're not taking James Conner, then take Trey Benson. Or if you're not taking Josh Jacobs, take Marshawn Lloyd. If you're not taking James Cook, take Ray Davis. And yet all of these guys are way depressed in their ADP from where we used to take the backups. We used to take the backups like pick 120, and now Benson and everybody else has just pushed way further. You also used to be able to take the rookies and just go like, I don't know, maybe the rookie gets some late season run around pick 140, 50, 60. Here are a bunch of rookies that I think could be the RB2 on their team going past pick 180. You tell me if you like any of these guys. Taj Brooks of Cincinnati, Dylan Sampson of Cleveland, Woody Marks of Houston, DJ Giddens of Indianapolis, and Ollie Gordon of Miami. Are you interested in any of those guys? Because they're all going past pick 180.
I mean, I definitely am mixing in. I haven't actually taken Ollie Gordon yet post NFL draft, but I'm mixing in most of those guys, and even like the Blake Corum, Jarquez Hunter tandem. I'm just switching it up because we don't know right now.
Right.
But this cohort, I think will rise in ADP a little bit as we get to training camp and we get information on like, Woody Marks like definitely is running as the RB2 behind Joe Mixon, or, Taj Brooks is definitely making the team and he's running as the RB2 behind Chase Brown. Right now, I'm hesitant on being like really overweight some of these fringe guys, just because, I mean, Taj Brooks was like a 5th or 6th round pick. Like, right. You don't really know. But yes, the point is like, we can feel pretty good. Like there's going to be some value here at some point. So right now in early drafts, I'm trying to keep my exposure flat to this like entire group. But in general, the concept of trying to look at some of these rookies and figuring out who could emerge here as the guy or who could be the RB2 is definitely on my radar for sure.
Yeah. The point I'm trying to bring up too is just that these guys are underpriced relative to where we used to draft the backup running backs or the rookie running backs. Some of the rookie running backs like Tootin or Jaden Blue are priced up, but then there is this other group of people, including some offenses that we really like where you're not having to pay up as much, right? Like Benson, Lloyd, and Ray Davis are on teams that we know are really good at running the football. And I want a piece, and yet they're undervalued. So the first part is banking on the backups. The next one, body bagging the dead zone. Okay? Body bagging the dead zone, because historically, the dead zone for running backs was rounds 3 through 8. But based on the way the ADP is this year, it's actually now pushed. It's like rounds 7 through 11 for me when I'm looking at some of these, and I'm seeing a lot of running backs here. Some of them can certainly work out. But this is a spot where I don't feel like I need to grab my third and fourth running back, where before we would 0 RB, we would wait for this range, and we would get there. And last year, this range was rough. This was like the Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, Jonathan Brooks, Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren, Devin Singletary, Gus Edwards.
I mean, the hits just keep going.
I mean, there's a couple of guys, like Brian Robinson was a fine pick in the 9th round. But overall, it's like we used to go to this range and say, this isn't great. It's been pushed back a little bit. So my strategy is I'm taking a couple more elite running backs early, knowing that the ADP is pushed up, and then I am body bagging this zone, round 7 through 11. I don't feel the need the way that my teams are constructed, and Betz will talk about a little bit later, but like this is where we love the quarterbacks when you get to 8, 9, and 10. It's a great range for this. And then my last little thought is to bet on the ambiguous backfields. I'm done with the alliteration part, but this is the strategy.
The alliteration slowly tailed off
just
over each
slowly.
of those 3 points.
The bread and butter best ball was...
that was... The kids say that was fire, Kyle.
Peak content. But the ambiguous backfields, Mike did some research on this, but every year there are teams without any running backs in the top 24, and there's such a high hit rate of going after offenses that have running backs pushed down. So last year it was Cincinnati. You're like, okay, I don't know if it's Moss. I don't know if it's Chase Brown. I'm just going to take a shot. And Chase Brown obviously was the league winner. Dallas, we did the same thing with Rico. The Chargers, we did that with J.K. Dobbins. And Washington, Brian Robinson. So this year, I wanted to get your thoughts on just 3 of them and finish out here. Washington is once again in that range where it's an ambiguous backfield per ADP. Austin Eckler was super efficient. Brian Robinson's the least sexy pick, but he gets it done. So are you interested in that backfield at all?
Yeah, this team should score a ton of points. If you think Jaden Daniels takes a step in year 2, which I think is a pretty good bet, this team will be in a lot of, I think, high-scoring games. So yeah, I think both those guys are fine. They're not sexy picks by any means, but if you, like, especially if you need to pair them with like a rookie early on, I think those guys are awesome picks.
Minnesota has Aaron Jones going to RB28 and Jordan Mason RB34. And it seems like it's not going to be a 50-50. I don't think we'll project it that way. But if this is a 60-40, I think Jordan Mason's a pretty good pick.
I mean, I just want any and all Vikings. Like, I just believe so much in the system and JJ McCarthy that I'm taking Aaron Jones, I'm taking Jordan Mason. Sometimes I'm taking them together. You know, like I'm switching it up. I don't know which one's the right one, but I want to get access to both guys.
And the last one I want to bring up is Chicago. DeAndre Swift is RB27. Roshan is RB52. But I do need to point out that Roshan Johnson is basically the highest ADP riser of any player over the last 20 days. It's like up 30 picks.
So I have taken both these guys begrudgingly, and I'm taking my medicine. I'm doing it. You guys know how I feel about Swift. I also am just really hesitant that this team is done adding somebody. There was a rumor on the social medias of potentially a Nick Chubb landing spot here with Chicago. So I'm not sure they're done adding. Now, there's not that many players out there that are available, but this is the problem with drafting in May is like you think you know the depth chart and then all of a sudden you don't in August. So I am willing to draft these guys, but they're definitely not like priority targets for me. Pretty much only when I have a Bear stack going or for like week 17, if I got a Niners stack going and I'm looking for a bring back, that's kind of where I'm thinking about those two guys.
Yeah, the vibes are tough when we know what Swift is. He's an RB2. And he hasn't always had the spike weeks that we want, but projects to be the lead guy. And then Roshan, I'll just read you the blurb that I wrote for Roshan on the UDK because he averaged 2.7 yards per attempt. And just for context, on only 55 carries, he was dead last in yards per carry among all running backs. However, In context, he was the battering ram for this team with 6 rushing touchdowns inside the 5. That's as many as Joe Mixon and James Cook. So he was actually better inside, in close, and also that's going to skew his yards per carry average, right? Like if you have a bunch of carries inside the 5, you're not going to be gaining more than 5 yards, logically. So I don't really care about his efficiency. I just really care, is he going to be the goal line back, and could he have a shot of maybe overtaking, or if Swift get injured? I'm fine with him still at his ADP. I think it's not terrible. It was really bad when he was going like pick 200, but I think he's a fine RB6, RB5, RB6 on your roster if you need that. But so just to review, the edge this year at running back is to bank on the backups, to body bag the dead zone, and to bet on ambiguous backfields. Boom.
That's a lot of B's, my friend. Nailed it. Look, man, Ben Johnson didn't care about Jamal Williams' 2.7 a carry, okay?
You're right.
The man scored like 48 touchdowns that year. So if Swift does not get goal line roll, Roschon will be fine. What an unbelievable outcome that was for Jamal Williams, like a 99th percentile range of outcomes. But yeah, the point remains. Okay. We talked a little bit in that section about some boring players. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler.
Say it to their
Roschon
face.
Johnson. Not the sexiest picks in the world. But my edge for this year is trying to make sure that your roster has a nice mix and match of player archetypes to help get you to the finish line, and then your late season upside picks can actually come through for you and hit. I used to always just pass on guys like Adam Thielen, Justice Hill, like the not best ball type picks, where when you think about who's a good pick in best ball, your mind immediately goes to like
Will Fuller.
Deshaun Jackson, Will Fuller, these guys that can pop up for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And those are valuable. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want those guys on my roster. But if you're only drafting those guys, you will have a lot of moments and a lot of weeks where you don't have the floor to kind of help support your team for the entire season. So I went back and looked at some of the advance rate data over the last 3 years. Some of the best picks as far as their advance rate for where they were going are some of these very boring players. Doesn't mean that you had to have them to win a tournament, but like these guys helped you get there to the playoffs. Justice Hill, 19% advance rate last year. Adam Thielen, again, last year, 19%. Zach Ertz for a long time, even on like DraftKings, was going in like round 19, round 20, but again on Underdog, 24% advance rate. Cortland Sutton, didn't feel good, didn't feel sexy last year. 28% advance rate. Alvin Kamara, right? Like all offseason, all summer, even myself, I was like, man, this guy is declining. Like, how much ceiling even is there with Alvin Kamara? But he was going in a range where he didn't have to be the RB1 to pay off his ADP and be a good advance rate player. 30% advance rate. In 2023, Brian Robinson Jr., again, not sexy. Gus Edwards, probably the least sexy player in the NFL. Jacoby Myers, 25% advance rate in 2023. One more year of numbers here, just kind of for fun. Zay Jones. I don't know. I don't ever picture Zay Jones as like a good pick, but in best ball, it works. Donovan Peoples-Jones had that 1 year, 21% advance rate. DPJ. Unreal. Jacoby Myers popping up again for the second season with a 21% advance rate back in 2022. So again, I want late season plays. Don't get me wrong. I want a lot of rookies on my roster because in theory, if I'm right, and I can get to week 15, 16, 17, we tend to see rookies playing very, very well. We tend to see some ambiguous situations emerge. But if you're only betting on those players and not mixing in some veteran archetypes, some guaranteed touches, some guaranteed routes, the boring picks on your team, you're going to have a hard time getting there. And so when I think about the landscape this year, as far as kind of how I'm approaching some specific, players and archetypes, like looking at a lot of the rookies, like I see a path for Emeka Egbuka, Burden, Colston Loveland. We like Jack Bash, Trey Harris, kind of the list goes on and on. But man, like, I don't know, how many targets is Luther Burden going to get in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season? Like, he could be the wide receiver 1. He could also be the wide receiver 3. We don't really know. Like, Trey Harris, I mean, there's a world that exists where Quentin Johnson outproduces him this year. I don't really know. I think it's going to be Trey Harris by the end of the year, but I don't know how it's going to look early on. And I want to bet on late season upside. Same thing with some of the RBs that are either like an injury away or maybe they like emerge, or Amarian Hampton, Travion Henderson, Like they've got kind of established bets that probably get touches in the first 6 weeks of the season, but you could see a path where those guys emerge. If I want those archetypes on my roster, I need some of these boring picks to help get me there. Is kind of my point. Some guys that I've identified that I think are fine for early season production: Alvin Kamara again, Joe Mixon again. Josh Palmer is not a sexy pick by any means.
He might be the least sexy player.
Oh, you're not showing anybody your team when you pick Josh Palmer. You're not like, look at this team I just drafted. But Josh Palmer will get routes. Christian Kirk is going as the wide receiver 61. He's going to be the slot wide receiver for CJ Stroud at tight end. Dallas Goedert, right? Like tight end 16. Like those guys don't feel, and that's just a few examples of a couple of the guys. There's many out there. But those guys do not feel like best ball picks.
Right.
But the data has shown you need a few of these guys on your team to complement those rookies, some injured players who you're hoping on for late in the season. You have to mix and match to help get to the finish line. It's kind of what I'm getting at here. You can't only draft quote unquote best ball archetypes. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of zeros and a lot of poor scores in your lineup on a week in and week out basis.
Yeah, one of the things that Betz and I do is we take Andy, Mike, and Jason's projections in the Ultimate Draft Kit, and we look at players that aren't aligning to their opportunities. So in the past, we used to say that with Debo, because Debo would get all these rush attempts, and we knew how efficient he was. And we go, hey, this guy is seeing more opportunities than we realize. Like we look at targets, and then you add up the rushing, production, red zone stuff. It makes a lot of sense. The tight ends is one of the main ones. Like you can look at targets, but we look a lot at just snaps and routes for these players. So the least sexy tight ends you mentioned, it used to be Cade Otton, and then he got sexy for a little bit.
He was hot.
Yeah. And now we don't really know what to do with him, but there's some other guys like Pat Freiermuth is probably undervalued by how much he's going to play for the Steelers. Hunter Henry is going to be playing a ton. Dalton Schultz is maybe the least sexy tight end. Like I think
there might not be one that's less sexy than Dalton. Come on, Dalton.
I wonder if Dalton Schultz has ever felt cool in his life.
He had that 1 or 2 seasons with Dallas. That was pretty cool.
I know, but even he wasn't even that cool. Like he probably went home.
The cool kids table.
I don't know. I'm gonna do some Dalton Schultz deep dive research and see what it was like in high school. Like, did he win any superlatives?
Poor guy. But yes, you're getting routes from Dalton Schultz. You're gonna get routes from Zach Ertz. You're gonna get routes from Hunter Henry. But like, they don't feel sexy, but some of those guys, that's sometimes is what you need in that draft. You don't have to think about this massive range of outcomes and having like a 99th percentile premium round 17 picks. Sometimes you just need points, and those guys will give that to you.
Have you noticed that there are people in your draft room that love the rookies? And I look at their rosters sometimes and I go, oh, they took Colston Loveland, who we like, or Jack Besh. I'm like, oh man, I kind of want a Jack Besh. And then I look at their roster and go, wow, they have 7 rookies on their roster. A lot of them were taken ahead of ADP because they've been rising up, and they're really fun, new, shiny toys. When you mentioned it, a lot of the veterans are just not a sexy pick. So it wouldn't shock me if Josh Palmer, ends up with more receiving yards than, say, Trey Harris this year. And it's like, oh man, I like Trey Harris. I like the player, but he ends up being the wide receiver 3 on that team. And maybe he morphs into something even better. We really liked his tape. We think he can be good, but in year 1, it's just not what it is. And Josh Palmer, ends up being the wide receiver 2 on the Bills. So those are the kind of situations I just worry when I look at rosters and I go, man, there's 7 rookies here. And maybe 3 of them are really good, but it's like you're banking so much on all of these guys overtaking playing time when I want to mix and match my roster.
For sure. I'm not saying don't draft rookies. Like, definitely draft rookies, but just make sure your archetypes fit together nicely is kind of how I would say it. Draft some rookies, draft some vets. If you're drafting an injured guy, you need somebody to help carry them along for the first 6 weeks, like that kind of stuff. So just make sure you're thinking about that. Don't just blindly think about upside case for every player.
And if you just pick the right rookies, you'll be fine. Just pick the good ones.
Yeah, just do that. It's so easy.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back.
It's starting to sound like spring, but it's not official till you've lit up the grill with Kingsford Original Charcoal. This time of year, as we break in the backyard with friends and family, everything tastes better cooked with authentic wood-fired barbecue flavor. Thanks to Kingsford. Welcome, spring. Visit Kingsford.com for charcoal and more from America's grilling expert.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
All right, my next edge that I want to talk about here for best ball in 2025 is not alliterative at all.
Come on.
Couldn't put in the time, couldn't put in the work for this one, but I'm calling it be aggressive with your quarterback construction. A lot of times we talk about you either go 2 or 3 quarterback builds, depending on, what you do. So if you draft an elite one, just wait till later. You'll draft somebody at the very end, but you're counting on Josh Allen's score every single week because you drafted Josh Allen at that spot. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. But I think the field is just not adjusting well in 2025 to this area that Betz and I have talked about in a lot of podcasts, but I want to emphasize it even more. Looking at quarterback 12 through 20, every single player is underpriced this year. So Brock Purdy is my highest rostered quarterback so far. If he wins MVP, like we talked about on last week's podcast, and if I win Best Ball Mania with Brock Purdy, I'm good to go. I'm not even going to do this podcast anymore if that happens.
Yeah, this podcast is canceled if that happens. By the way, you mentioned, I don't know if you recall saying this on our recording, you're like, he's getting paid right now. And then on the same day the podcast came out, Brock Purdy got his extension. So I think Brock should send you a few dollars, at least a BBM entry, to say thank you.
That's the way that he gives it, just a free entry, but I got to use promo code Purdy.
There you go.
So Brock Purdy is going as quarterback 12, and he's going as late as any quarterback 12 over the last couple of years. Last year, we were drafting Caleb Williams as the quarterback 12 in Underdog, and he was going at pick 97. So he's going a full round ahead of where Brock Purdy is going right now. Jared Goff, who I think is a fine pick, I won't say is a great pick, is going later than any other QB 13 over the last 5 years. Dak Prescott, who has risen up a ton. Okay, so Dak Prescott used to be going, another 20 picks later? He's the QB 14. This is the latest that the QB 14 has gone over the last 5 years. All right, Justin Herbert, same thing, QB 15. Drake May, who's at QB 16, is actually fallen a little bit. He was going a little higher, man. What's going on?
I'm just scooping him up every time.
Yeah, it's because Dak was rising. It wasn't anything wrong with May, but he's going later. Jordan Love, who I'm crazy about this year, going at 129. That's later. CJ Stroud, I'm coming around to the fact that I think he's fine at his price at QB 18. I think it's lower than where he could finish. And the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. So all of this is to say that normally we'd say, okay, well, in this range, get one guy and then you can pair up to 3. I'm finding that not only do I double tap here, but I think there's an edge against your opponents who have been playing the same way for multiple years. They've been playing I take Lamar Jackson, and at the very end, I'm taking somebody, at the end of my draft who doesn't matter. So who's a quarterback? Sam Darnold, or I'm taking Matthew Stafford, or I'm taking Geno Smith. Quarterbacks that are fine, but not ones that we would say have the type of top 10 upside of all the guys I just listed. So I'm grabbing multiple quarterbacks in this range, and I'm overstacking with this range. So I was in a lunch draft with you, Betz. I don't know if you saw my roster, but it's pretty hot stuff. I took Brock Purdy. I took Jordan Love, and then I was fine with the 2 quarterback build, but I wanted to push it a little bit, and I got Michael Penix to stack with Drake London past ADP. So I have 3 quarterbacks where normally I think most people would be fine with just 2 in this range, but I'm taking 3 in this quarterback 12 to, I think Penix is 21 right now in this range.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. This range is a really good target for a few reasons. One, as you mentioned, their cost is lower than they have been historically, which I think that's true in general across the board at quarterback. Like, Jalen Hurts falls to the 5th round a ton. I don't know. We just got news that Tush Push is still around. Seems like a pretty great pick in the 5th round to me. Sometimes you'll get Josh Allen at like the back of the 4th if your room lets it kind of fall that way. Like, I think just in general, quarterback prices are too cheap. And I think the trickle-down effect is because RBs are now pushed up a lot more than they have been historically. But when you look at this quarterback range specifically, like this 10 to 20-ish range, there's a lot of ceiling here. Like Herbert, I think, is an awesome target. We talked a lot about Purdy, obviously our MVP, our hero. Sometimes you'll get Justin Fields to fall. He's been falling a bit. Drake May, obviously. And Trevor Lawrence, like I'm very excited about the Jaguars this year. We haven't seen that huge Trevor Lawrence ceiling, but I think it could happen this year. So yeah, I'm in on all these guys. And like historically, if you've kind of waited to this part of the draft to take a quarterback, you feel like you're behind and you have to take 3 is kind of what you mentioned. But like you said, I'm totally cool if you just kind of go with a 2 quarterback build with some of these guys, especially if one of those quarterbacks like a May or Fields like has a rushing component to his game. I'm totally fine with 2 of these guys.
Yeah, and Jordan Love was a top 5 quarterback the year before. And this past year, it felt bumpy, but his TD rate actually went up. So I like this, and the other part of the advice is not just grabbing multiple from this range, but overstacking. So in that example of that draft, I had Purdy, but I also had McCaffrey, Pearsall, and Kittle. And I was fortunate to get 49ers, who were both very high on, past ADP on some, especially Kittle at pick 57. I think he's like 48 in my ranks. So I felt like, man, I'm really stealing here. But I looked back to 2022, which had the same number of running backs that went in this in the first couple of rounds. So it's set up very similar, where in 2022, there's this kind of dead zone range of quarterbacks. Trey Lance was going in a little bit before this.
Oh, no. Don't bring that up.
Trey Lance, Russell Wilson, Dak, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, all of them, their advance rates were 10% or below. They were very, very bad picks. But in this range, we were taking Justin Fields, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, who are all 25+% advance rates. So I think it's the same way. And then the last point, when you are constructing, you are stacking, which we're going to have an entire episode on stacking, the pass-catching weapons actually help elevate the rest of your stack. So last year, if you would have waited and taken a quarterback in this range like Baker was a really good pick. But if you overstacked him with a couple of options, if it was, you start off with Mike Evans, and then you're like, I missed out on Rachaad White, I guess I'll take Bucky Irving later on. And then you added Baker, you could have thrown on Jalen McMillan at the end and just gone bonkers. But realize this, there were only 6% of Baker lineups that had Evans and McMillan in it with Baker. 6%. That's like super, super low, considering Evans is the obvious person to stack with Baker, and McMillan was just somebody you tack on the end. I know you were a little bit higher on McMillan than me last year, but like those are the kind of things. Same thing with Cade Otton, who we talked about a bunch. Evans and Baker were stacked in 26% of Baker lineups, but if you added Cade Otton, only 9% of the lineups, of Baker lineups did it, but the advance rate was over 32%. So my point is, take this range of quarterback and then be willing to overstack. Like not just saying, hey, I got, Purdy and Kittle and I'm done. It's like, no, take Pearsall if you have a chance to. And then also you can come back later and get another, late piece if you want to, Garendo or a dart throw at wide receiver.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You can also do that with some of the Patriots, like Hunter Henry goes pretty late. Ramondre falls now to like the 140 sometimes. Like, and I get it with Trayvon Henderson, but like, I think he'll still have a role of some sort. Packers guys, there's a couple that fall that are pretty cheap. So yeah, and then, the Jaguars, like, they're kind of expensive because we know you want Brian Thomas Jr. and you want Travis Hunter, but like, Jamie Brown in round 18 is fine. If you think Parker Washington could have the slot role, that's fine to me. Brenton Strange is pretty cheap for a tight end. So yeah, this whole group, like you just talked about, their price is pretty cheap, but also then the entire like team as far as stacking can be had for cheap if you're able to add on that third guy or that fourth guy. So yeah, that's a good call. Definitely been doing that a lot in my drafts too.
Yeah, I'm still playing with it, and we'll get some more language around it when we have our full stacking episode. But man, we want to push the issue on certain teams and buy into offenses. Like, this isn't about us just getting player takes right. Like, I don't think either one of us said like Jalen McMillan is going to have this insane touchdown run in the final 5 weeks of the season. But if you just would have bet on the Buccaneers last year, bet on the Buccaneers with Baker, then you would have done fine.
Yeah, last year's BBM champ, I'm trying to pull up the roster real quick, was a Bengals team and had like Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Chase Brown, and I think Jermaine Burton, and just went all in. Now, in hindsight, Jermaine Burton sounds hilarious, but like same point. It's just like I'm betting on this team being good. Why would I just stop at quarterback, wide receiver, and then be done? Like just bet on the team, and that's what you're doing in best ball. So I like that call. Okay, we mentioned earlier in our conversation body bagging the running back dead zone. You already mentioned there's a quarterback dead zone. I guess we're not going to talk about tight end dead zones, but there is one.
They all suck.
They're all terrible. Just get McBride or Bowers and move on. But wide receiver dead zones is a concept that's not really talked about in best ball, but definitely, in my opinion, exists. And we have to lay out the obvious, like you need wide receiver production in best ball. You have to start 3. At times, you want the wide receiver to hit the flex, so we need them to be on a roster. That's kind of been a staple of best ball drafting for the last 4 or 5 years now. And historically, we've kind of had a rule like, you want 4 by round 7. It's kind of like the general best ball ism that's out there. Now, you shouldn't just blindly follow any specific thing, but like having somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 wide receivers is a pretty good rule, depending on how many you took earlier or later. Sometimes you'll push to 9, but like there's kind of a set group of what you need at wide receiver. And I think a lot of people that have been playing for a while understand that. But there's kind of like this logjam of wide receivers, in my opinion, that go in rounds 6 to 8 this year. 19 of the 36 picks in those 3 rounds are wide receivers because, again, the trickle-down effect. Our RBs are going earlier, so wide receivers in this bucket are kind of pushed down a little bit. And there's a couple of nice targets, I think, in this spot. Like, I like Ricky Pearsall that kind of goes in this range. There's definitely some upside rookies as far as like Egbuka and Burden, but like, I don't know, man. Like, there's just like a bunch of guys in this range that I don't honestly know how talented they are or like what the ceiling case is or how to differentiate some of the veterans in this spot. But everybody that take running back early gets to this point in their draft and they're like, okay, well, I need 7 or I need 6 to 8. I only have like 2 or 3 so far. Like, I need to take 2 of these guys in this range. And so it kind of feels like the old RB dead zone space where like, I know I need them. They're running out quick. I got to grab them in this spot. And if you go even a little bit beyond that to like rounds 9 to 11, that's where it really falls off at wide receiver. Only 10 picks in this range currently based off the landscape on Underdog are wide receivers. And man, you could sell me on any of these guys and I would not be surprised if they work out. I also can see a path where they all do terribly this year. It's like the, Michael Pittman, Bateman, Jack Besh, Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown type of range. They're not incredible picks in my opinion. Then you get past that and you're like, okay, I'm going to wait on wide receiver even further. They just don't exist until like week, I don't know, 13 or around 13 or 14 again. So my take home here is like, we know we need them, but if you wait, can you really get what you need in these ranges of the draft? It feels like you can't. And so I'm not saying I'm not taking these guys because I certainly am. But like you talked about with the quarterbacks that go in these spots, I feel so much better about some of the quarterbacks that go in this range, some of the tight ends, depending on them, and a couple of the backup running backs. But man, this zone of wide receiver just feels gross. So how are you attacking this kind of like round 6 to 11 range?
Yeah, I really like, you mentioned some of the tight end spots too. It's like Evan Ingram. I don't mind Kelsey if he goes in the 9th round. You have the rookie tight ends. Njoku's fine. Mark Andrews is still alive. So there's players that I can get in that range, but I think the fear that you pointed out is, okay, where am I going to make up for what I didn't do earlier in my draft? I feel behind. I'm behind where everybody else is. I look at this other roster, man, they already have 5 wide receivers and I'm at 3. Or they have 6 and I'm only at 4. And they told me, based on the data, that I need at least 7 wide receivers, and my team's looking like I'm going to need 9 of them, but they don't exist. You mentioned it. When you get to round 12, people, right now, and it'll change in ADP, there are literally 0 wide receivers going in round 12 in the data that we're looking at, okay? So You waited on it, and then you're scrolling down. You're like, wait a second, I need a wide receiver. They're all gone. Kyle Williams is gone. What do I do? And then you look at and you're like, oh no, I'm taking Quentin Johnston. That's who I have to take. That's who I have to take as my wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 4, whoever it is. And it gets worse as you go further on. Now, some of these picks will work out. I don't think what Betz is saying is, hey, just avoid wide receivers from round 7 to 12. You're going to have to take some. But it's more of saying the way that you're constructing your roster, don't assume that you're going to get saved from this range. Like, I think Stephon Diggs could be a good pick. He's going as wide receiver 43. He could be wide receiver 30. He could be a top 24 wide receiver. Maybe he's the dude. That's a good pick. But there's a lot of other guys in this range that could probably do the same thing. And so what I find myself doing is being able to wait and let other people feel like they need to load up in some of these ranges. And I'm actually comfortable if I only have 5 wide receivers through rounds, 12, because I'm letting everybody else kind of push them up the board. I'm going after quarterback. I'm going after tight end. And then I'm also going after a lot of the running backs that we talked about that are backups. Like when I get to round, 14 and 15, it's like, hey, I want to go after the, Trey Bensons or Roshan Johnson. I guess he's round 15 now. I want to go after guys in this range that are the backup running backs that can make my team stronger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I think about like the dead zone definition from like running backs historically has been projectable volume. We think they're going to get all the touches, and then all of a sudden they're either not talented or they just don't get those touches. They're kind of a fragile profile. There's a lot of wide receivers that go in this like 9 to 11 range that, like, are they even full-time players? Like Marvin Mims barely played half the snaps in like 4 games last year. I don't know. Kyle Williams is like a fun upside pick, and don't get me wrong, like I'm taking some Kyle Williams just in case because I love Drake May, but like he wasn't that good of a prospect. Like there's a lot of guys that go in this kind of group, even when you get to like, earlier round 8 too, like these are part-time players for the most part. So I will mix in these guys, don't get me wrong, especially when I'm stacking, but I definitely don't want like a lot of my wide receiver firepower to come from this group.
Yeah, I'm also noticing that just my exposure rates, it's early, so we're still in May, but they're just a lot flatter in this range.
Yeah,
because
same.
they all feel the same. Like, I mean, I like Jack Besh. I want him to do well. I'm missing out on him more than I want to. And I think that's okay because, it's the Raiders. We like them for their win total. We don't know if they're going to be a top tier offense. So, yeah. One last edge. And maybe this is a good talk to have right now, Betz, is just about exposure. This is, I wanted to call this exposure therapy, where it's like, hey,
sounds helpful.
Yeah, it sounds super helpful. Hey, you're really scared of this thing. Now I'm going to expose you to it and make you overcome your fear. I don't know if that works, but basically in best ball, we are all creatures of habit. And if you keep doing best ball drafts and you keep going to lunch and Betz keeps bullying you at the lunchtime, puppies, you kind of end up in the same routine and you look up after 20, 25 drafts and you go, wow, I've drafted this player a lot. We call it the Kamani Vidal-Sassoon disease, where you enter July, August, you look up in August and you go, okay, God, I really need just this one time. If this combination of Kyle Pitts plus Kamani Vidal hits, I'm going to make so much money.
Oh my gosh.
One time.
The Kamani Vidal thing in hindsight is just so hilarious. Like, he barely even played. But you're right. We are drafting teams that can compete, not players.
Yes.
And not exposures even. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I will be overweight certain players because I believe in their upside at their cost or whatever. But like Kyle said, you don't want to be stuck in August being like, well, back in May, like, I thought Taj Brooks was the guy you wanted if you're not taking Chase Brown, and all of a sudden, like, he doesn't make the team or something. Like, I mean, that's a terrible example. I think he's making the team, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, right now, there's so many fragile situations across the NFL, especially when you get after, like, round 14, 15, like, we don't actually know. The ADP tells us that this is what's going to happen, but we don't actually know. So keeping your exposures flat, I think, at this point in the process especially, is a really good strategy, because the other thing too is, like, unfortunately guys are getting hurt in training camp. And we obviously don't know who that is, and we can't predict that. It's just part of the game. So I'm with you. Like, I used to be an early stand type of guy, but like right now, I'm just kind of letting the board fall and stacking and having good roster construction and looking at week 17 and going from there. And I think if you do that now, you'll probably be happier on the totality rather than just saying like, these are the guys I need, in May.
Sounds like you're taking a, vibes-based flow state approach.
Oh, dude, we're all vibes-based right now. All the vibes.
You're in your draft room, the timer's going, you're like, man, you know what feels right? What feels good in the moment right now?
I just let the board tell me who to take, man. I don't think about it. Let's draft freely. I'm
just there. So just to give you some numbers, based on the way the draft works, an exposure rate of 8.33% is normalized. Like, okay, if you have 8%, that's good. If you start getting above 15%, you are saying, and obviously you need enough drafts. If you're only doing 10 drafts, whatever, that's fun too. We're down with 10 drafts. But if you're doing a lot more drafts, once you start to get above 15, you're saying, I'm really taking a stance on this player. And if you're one of those people that go, hey, I don't really like this player. Why is this player at 25%? You can back off, and it would probably be good. Anything above 25% is extremely bullish. And I only get to a couple of those players every year where it's like, okay, I keep taking them. 50% is nuts. Do not do that. If you are drafting, 50 times, that's insane. I got up to 31% last year on Darnell Mooney. And I think I pushed the edge probably more than I should have. It obviously paid off as a really good best ball pick. The year before, I did the exact same thing with Michael Gallup, who was projected to be on the field the whole time with the Cowboys. 28%. It did not work out very well. So those are the type of players that I end up really high in my exposures, is like wide receiver 2s and 3s that like, I just think they're going to be on the field a ton, and they might give me 3 or 4 spike weeks. So we will see who those guys are. Right now, I do have a good amount of Adam Thielen because he goes late, and he's one of those dudes. I have a good amount of Ricky Pearsall, who I have higher, which still shocks me, and I have a good amount of DK. So what could go wrong with these guys?
There's nothing that could go wrong, Kyle. This is what I was talking about earlier, too, with some of the Week 17 type stuff. Like, if you're using some of these tiebreakers with the schedule to help you get on different players that you wouldn't have otherwise, because we all do this, right? We all get in our blinders on and we say, like, these are the guys we're taking in every round and these are my targets. And then before you know it, you're 30 drafts in or 50 drafts in and you're like, wow, I did not want that much Drake May. Like, I wanted a lot, but I didn't want that much. So make sure that you are, thinking about that. And not every drafter is the same. Like, if that's your strategy and you're good with the kind of all-in approach of all or nothing, like, some people like that. That's cool. It's your money. You do what you want. But other people prefer the flatter kind of exposure. And I think over the years we're getting old, man. We're kind of more into the flatter exposure because it helps mitigate risk a lot more. But everybody's different. Everybody's got their own philosophy. Make sure you find what works for you.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now that my Mark Andrews exposure looks very different. Like, if my 2025 data was talking to my, last 4-year data of Underdog, it'd be like, hey, where's Mark Andrews at, buddy? He used to be top dog. I do have a lot of Mason Taylor at tight end. I did not think that would be the case, but our rankings, we are very ahead of consensus on him.
Dude, Mason Taylor. I mean, hey, I have no idea how good he actually is, but he will be running a lot of routes for Justin Fields.
Are you telling me that what you really needed was the Drake May to Kyle Williams, Travion Henderson combo with the Mason Taylor bringback?
I'm
week
pretty
17?
Sure I drafted that exact combination.
There you go, dude.
Like 2 days ago.
Dude, you are correlating. You are so far ahead of the curve. But okay, I know we're just at the end of the episode. There's correlation with there. You're looking at the team. You're saying May's good. I also just think those guys can all beat their ADP. Mason Taylor is probably going to beat his ADP. Hunter Henry, if you had him, probably going to beat his ADP. Drake May, we think, can be a top 12 quarterback. He's quarterback 16 right now. Travion can be a top 12 running back. What could go wrong? This makes so much sense.
I mean, just ignore everything that you just heard for this entire hour and just draft that team and you're going to win. You're going to win $1 million.
You're going to get to draft with us all summer long. We will make sure in Discord that Betz gets to have lunchtime with you next week. We will get to record an awesome episode, and then I will get to be there in Pennsylvania. Betz and I will probably share some picks with you guys, get to draft together on the back porch. It'll be good times. Betz, Tell everyone goodbye.
Kyle, we're not doing pictures, dude. We're going to do a vlog, okay? That's what the kids are doing these days. We're not doing that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Hopefully, everybody gets some Drake Money Stacks. Hopefully, you correlate, get some Week 17. And we'll catch you next week for another great episode. We'll see you then. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.
Take the party outside this summer. Walmart has all you need to style your outdoor setup. From patio furniture to tableware to outdoor rugs and decor. Let the alfresco fun begin. Prep for outdoor entertaining at walmart.com.
It's starting to sound like spring, but it's not official till you've lit up the grill with Kingsford Original Charcoal. This time of year, as we break in the backyard with friends and family, everything tastes better cooked with authentic wood-fired barbecue flavor. Thanks to Kingsford. Welcome, spring. Visit Kingsford.com for charcoal and more from America's grilling expert.